An American wants to correct a British and got grammared into silence. Ethan had always thought of himself as a fairly confident American traveler. He'd been to Europe twice, once with a college group where his only responsibility was to wake up on time, and once on a cruise where every cultural interaction was curated, translated or softened by a tour guide with a megaphone. But this time he was traveling alone and proud, alone and ready to prove he was, as he liked to say, an internationally competent. To prepare, he watched 3 YouTube videos on British phrases Americans should know, and read one article titled 10 Things Americans Do That Annoy Europeans, which he skimmed. Mostly the bullet points, mostly the short ones. Still, he felt prepared. Landing at Heathrow, he stepped off the plane with the swagger of someone who believed their high school AP English score still meant something overseas. He had practiced saying cheers at least 20 times, though he still wasn't fully sure when people used it. But he was confident he'd figure it out through context clues. He also knew not to say restroom because the British apparently preferred toilet, which felt a little blunt but fine. Culture. He marched toward customs, ready to claim his place among the effortlessly worldly. The officer, a tall man with a calm, almost librarian-sounding voice, asked the usual questions. Purpose of visit, length of stay, accommodations. Ethan answered smoothly. Well, smooth enough, until they got to the word holiday. "And are you here for business or holiday?" the officer asked. "Oh, vacation," Ethan corrected with a polite smile. "We call it vacation." The officer blinked once very slowly. "We call it holiday," he replied, stamping the passport so firmly that it felt like punctuation. Ethan's smile wavered. He'd thought he was helping, maybe contributing to cultural exchange, maybe even being educational. But the pause the officer gave him felt like a gentle, British equivalent of "don't do that again." He laughed awkwardly and rolled his suitcase out of the line. That should have been his hint. But Ethan, confident as ever, refused to take it. Outside, at the taxi area, he found himself standing next to a woman who looked unmistakably British, stylish coat, purposeful stride, and a kind of relaxed politeness Americans only managed in yoga classes or pharmaceutical commercials. She was struggling slightly with a suitcase whose wheels behaved as if they were on strike. Trying to be helpful, Ethan grabbed the handle and angled it upright. "These older models just need a little leverage," he said. "You guys call them trolleys or something, right?" She raised an eyebrow, amused. "We call the ones inside trolleys." "This is just a suitcase." "Right," Ethan said. "You know, you Brits say some things funny." It slipped out. He didn't mean for it to. Sometimes his brain took detours without permission. "Oh?" she said in the calm tone of a teacher who had just caught a student correcting the textbook incorrectly. He realized he needed to clarify. Not like wrong, just different. Different as in, correct? She asked. He froze. Was she joking? Her face was neutral, unreadable, perfectly British. "Well," he laughed, "I mean, we invented modern American English, technically. So in some ways, the child language corrected the parent?" She asked, still neutral. The taxi queue moved forward. Ethan wished it would move faster. She continued, voice still gentle but now carrying the unmistakable glint of a person who had taken offense in the most dignified way possible. "It's interesting," she said, "because you said we say things funny, but you're in our country, using our language, which, if I recall, originated here. I mean, yeah. But like, for example, sidewalk versus pavement. Sidewalk is descriptive," she said. "Pavement is accurate." She was smiling now, but it was the kind of smile that felt like a chess move. A sidewalk is also pavement, but not all pavement is a sidewalk. We aim for precision. He blinked. "Okay, but vacation makes more sense than holiday." "Does it?" she asked. Holiday, holy day, originally days of rest granted from labor. Vacation, derived from vacate, meaning to empty. Which of the two sounds more pleasant? A holy rest or an emptying? Ethan inhaled. "Well, when you put it that way—" "Oh, don't worry," she said brightly, adjusting her now obedient suitcase. Americans often assume their version is the standard. It's the confidence. Charming in small doses. Charming. In small doses. Somehow, that might have been worse than an insult. Her taxi arrived. She waved politely. "Have a lovely holiday." He forced a smile. "You too." As she drove off, Ethan found himself feeling something unfamiliar, linguistically defeated, grammared into silence, and the silence followed him. Inside his taxi, he replayed the conversation. Every word, every inflection, especially the part where she surgically dismantled his argument using etymology, tone, and the faintest trace of pity. He slumped back in the seat. The driver, another Brit naturally, glanced back through the mirror. "First time in London?" "Yeah," Ethan sighed. "Lovely. Here for a holiday?" Ethan hesitated. A full second, maybe two. "Yes," he replied quietly. "Yes, I'm here for a holiday." The driver nodded as if nothing unusual had happened. Meanwhile, Ethan felt as though he had surrendered a small part of his linguistic citizenship. The driver continued. "You staying near the city center?" "The what?" "The city center." "You mean downtown?" The driver chuckled, a friendly chuckle, but one that confirmed Ethan should never attempt to correct another British person for as long as he lived. Downtown's a different concept. Center's the middle of a city. Downtown's the commercial bit. You'll catch on. Ethan stared out the window. "Yeah," he murmured. "I guess I will." He felt humbled. Not in the poetic character development way, but in the "my entire understanding of English is less universal than I thought" way. Suddenly, his YouTube videos felt like betrayal. His skimmed article felt like a prank. And every word he considered saying now ran through a filter labeled, "Is this actually English here?" By the time his taxi arrived at his hotel, he had accepted 3 truths. He did not, in fact, possess superior linguistic knowledge. Every Brit he encountered would out-vocabulary him effortlessly. He needed desperately to stop explaining things to people who originated the language. But the trip had only begun, and London, as he would soon learn, had many more lessons in store. By his 3rd day in London, Ethan had developed an internal British English early warning system. It wasn't flawless, but he could now detect with surprising accuracy when he was about to embarrass himself linguistically. The system worked like this. Red alert. If a Brit paused before responding, he had said something wrong. Orange alert. If they said interesting, he had said something very wrong. Full meltdown. If they raised one eyebrow and smiled politely, he needed to stop speaking entirely. He hadn't reached meltdown status again, yet. But the universe, as always, was patient. That evening, determined to socialize like a real traveler instead of hiding in his hotel room, Googling British slang, meaning polite. Confusion. He walked into a pub near Covent Garden. A small brass plaque near the door read, "Mind your head," which to him felt symbolic. A warning, a promise, a threat. Inside, the place was warm and loud in that cozy, almost literary way British pubs always seem to be in movies. Wood-paneled walls, low lights, conversations that sounded like they belonged in a BBC series about friendship and understated emotional crises. Ethan stepped up to the bar. A bartender with a neatly trimmed beard and the calm confidence of a man who knew 148 beer varieties. By heart glanced his way. "What can I get you?" "A lager," Ethan said, proud of the universally understood simplicity. "Which one?" Ethan blinked. There were at least 20 taps. The normal one." The bartender smiled faintly. "They're all normal here, mate." Ethan pointed at the nearest tap. "That one." "Brilliant." The bartender poured it with the smooth efficiency of someone who had poured enough beers to qualify as a hydraulic engineer. Ethan took a sip, cold, crisp, perfect, and exhaled. Maybe tonight he could just be without the weight of international linguistic conflict. Pressing on his shoulders, he found an empty table near the back and settled in. A couple minutes later, 3 people around his age, 2 men and a woman, approached carrying pints. "Mind if we join? It's heaving in here," one of the men asked. "Sure," Ethan said. "Go ahead." They sat. Introductions followed. Olivia, James and Zach, local Londoners, friendly and bright-eyed. Exactly the kind of people travel blogs insisted you meet for authentic cultural immersion. "So where in the States are you from?" Olivia asked. Maryland, he said. Near D.C. Oh, the capital, James said. Lots of politics there. Too much, Ethan replied with a laugh. So how are you finding London? Zach asked. Good, Ethan said. I mean, I'm still adjusting to the, language differences. The three exchanged amused glances. Olivia smirked. Ah, the great English divide. I'm trying, Ethan said. Really. I just keep saying things wrong. James lifted his pint. Welcome to Britain. We collect linguistic misunderstandings the way Americans collect. What do you call them? State quarters? Hey, that was a thing for like 2 years, Ethan protested. Right, James said, voice dry enough to be preserved in a museum. But they all laughed, and Ethan felt himself relax. Then it happened. Zach said something totally innocent. I'll go queue for another round. Ethan, without thinking, replied, You mean get in line? There was silence. Not dramatic silence. Not angry silence. Just British silence. Quiet. Precise. Surgical. Olivia glanced at him with the gentle patience of someone about to explain basic algebra to a child. A queue is a line, she said. But it's a tidier word for it. Not tidier, James added. More elegant. Line is very ruler and pencil. Queue has flavor. Flavor? Ethan repeated, nodding, then realized the trap. I mean, flavor. Olivia giggled. You're learning. Slowly, he muttered. Zach returned with fresh pints and sat. All sorted, he said. Then to Ethan. You all right, mate? You look like someone stole your sneakers. Trainers, James corrected automatically. Right, trainers. Zach laughed. See, even we correct each other. It's the principle, Olivia said. We love a good semantic debate. James sipped his pint. Speaking of which, he looked at Ethan. Do you say aluminum? Ethan nodded, bracing himself. James shook his head with theatrical disappointment. It's aluminium. One more syllable. Lovely syllable. Why skip it? Because we like efficiency, Ethan said. Then why do you pronounce herb like you've shoved it off a cliff? Ethan frowned. What does that mean? You dropped the H. Herb. Sounds like you're scared of the poor letter. Ethan laughed despite himself. Okay, that's fair. But James wasn't done. And what about schedule? He pressed. Why the hard K? We say it like it's spelled, Ethan countered. Olivia leaned forward. And we say it like it's meant to be pronounced. Something about the way she said it. Calm. Confident, infuriatingly logical, made. Ethan raised his hands in surrender. All right, he laughed. I give up. You guys win. British English wins. We weren't competing, James said. We were absolutely competing, Olivia replied. But her tone was warm, friendly, not like the airport officer who stole a piece of Ethan's pride and stamped it in his passport. Zach raised his glass. To linguistic differences, and to our American friend who came here brave enough to get corrected by an entire nation. They clinked pint glasses. Ethan grinned. To holiday lessons. The table erupted with cheers, and for the first time since landing, the word felt natural, like part of his vocabulary, like a bridge instead of a mistake. The night got louder. The jokes got sharper. The cultural exchange got increasingly ridiculous. But something shifted for Ethan. He wasn't trying to correct anyone now. He wasn't trying to defend American English. He wasn't trying to be internationally competent. He was just listening, learning, laughing, absorbing the rhythm of a language that wasn't his but welcomed him anyway. As the pub started to wind down and people drifted out into the cool London night, Olivia turned to him and smiled. You know, she said, most Americans don't take corrections well. You handled it brilliantly. Honestly, Ethan said. I think I needed it. It's all part of the holiday, she said. He nodded. Yeah, it is. And for the first time, the word felt right.